All right, we had a caller that wanted to make a point. I'm going to let him make it quickly and give you time to respond. DW, you're up. Go ahead.
Look, first of all, the Confederation of Clubs is run by the Banditos anyway. They've taken it over the past 20 years. I don't know what happened in Waco. That's not really my business. But the fact that they changed the name of Confederation of Clubs and Independence, people like me that aren't part of a club and don't want to be associated with that and don't want that kind of image, we don't want nothing to do with it. So why they suddenly included us in the Confederation of Clubs, they're like, oh, well, it's for motorcycles' rights. No, it's crap. They're trying to run everything. And this thing Sunday, I don't know exactly what happened, but I know there's a lot more that's going to come out. And then the other thing is, I come from 4 generations of law enforcement. I am 100% of the time always going to back the police officer. And there's been a bunch of crap talk on the internet the past couple of days by the different motorcycle clubs about how, oh, the cops are so bad and they did this and they set up everybody. That's a bunch of crap. If you look like a criminal, you're probably acting like a criminal, and that's why they took those people into custody until they can get all this mess sorted out.
All right, hold on. David? A number of people, I don't know, I'm hoping you could hear that call, but a number of people have suggested to me in emails who I've asked for advice from that the Confederation of Clubs is really just the Banditos operating under a different name.
Well, I have a number of things to respond. The first thing is I think that you can frame the caller's comments based on the fact that he said that he's completely biased and will always take law enforcement side. I mean, that was one of the first things that he said. So you have to take every one of his comments with that in mind. The second thing is, it's an absurd statement to say that the Banditos or any other motorcycle club runs the Confederation of Clubs. There are confederations in every state. There are confederations in states where the Banditos do not exist. And in fact, sir, the state that I'm from, Washington State, I'm the chair of the Confederation of Clubs. I'm from a very small regional motorcycle club. There are a lot of Banditos or members of that club.
Hold right there. David Devereaux is with the Confederation of Clubs. We'll talk about what happened in Waco coming up. David Devereaux is with the Confederation of Clubs. We're talking about what happened in Waco. David, number of emails coming in from folks. One, I'll let you respond to the issue of the Banditos, but he says a family member of his is in a club that's not part of the Confederation of Clubs. He said he asked me to tell you that the Confederation of Clubs is Banditos or another friendly 1% club if there isn't a Bandito club in the city or state. They extort money from legitimate clubs for permission to ride in organized clubs with patches. If you ride in a club with a Texas rocker and don't pay into Confederation of Clubs, you will have problems with Banditos. They wear the 1% patch for a reason. They are criminals. The Confederation of Clubs is controlled by Banditos or other 1% clubs, and that is a fact. That's what a number of people have emailed me something to that effect.
To make a generalized presupposition about all motorcyclists based on one club, or even to make a generalized presupposition about a motorcycle club the size of the Banditos based on the actions of a few, it's bankrupt. It doesn't make any intellectual sense. Independent of that, every single one of these Confederation of Clubs meetings across the country is attended by a National Coalition of Motorcyclists attorney. It absolutely ensures that all the business or anything discussed at the Confederation of Clubs meeting is solely confined to political and legislative issues. Independent of the fact that, as I stated, I'm the chair of the Confederation of Clubs in Washington State. I'm not from a big national club. I'm not from a big club that is perceived or labeled the way the media labels these bigger clubs. I'm from a smaller club. There are lots of members of those other clubs in this state. It is simply not true. They do not control the Confederation of Clubs, independent of the fact that the Confederation of Clubs doesn't sanction any club in any state. Any of that has nothing to do with Confederation of Clubs. And things like that are being discussed, if they do happen, are happening outside of the confines of the Confederation of Clubs. And these clubs have nothing to do with controlling a political organization. It's like one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. If you've ever attended a Confederation of Clubs meeting, anywhere from coast to coast, from L.A. to Maryland to Texas to Washington State, they're all very, very above the board and completely focused on political and legislative issues. Don't even discuss interclub politics. It's not an element that's ever discussed at Confederation of Clubs meetings. That's simply just not true. And obviously coming from a source that hasn't been involved or attended these meetings anywhere.
David Devereaux with the Confederation of Clubs. David, it does seem, and I look, you and I can find common ground on one thing. I don't know what happened inside or outside that Twin Peaks, but I don't ever recall 174 people being arrested in a situation like this, and certainly not with $1 million bond. That seems excessive, and I don't know how you could determine that 174 people were suspects at this point and worthy of being detained, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. However, it does seem there was quite a bit of animosity between the individuals inside there, regardless what group they were with, to have fired off that many shots.
Like I said, without being there, we have no idea how the conflict started or why it started. And if there were any disputes between individuals that were present at that location that day before a meeting began, I can't speak to that. We just don't know. I don't have an answer for something that I don't have the details of the information for. So I have no idea whether there's any tension between individuals. But here's what I will say is that, this is not the first time there's been a conflict or a fight in public. And generally what happens is not 174 people being arrested. There have been fights at soccer games. There have been fights in public in many different places, and 174 people are not incarcerated and given $1 million bail. I really do agree that is our common ground, and that's one of the more important issues to focus on is the massive deprivation of due process that obviously a majority of these people are experiencing right now. And I think that really is the really injustice. The discussion is being diverted to conjecture about things that we don't know because they haven't released the video evidence of the ballistics report or things that we would need to be able to draw those conclusions. But unfortunately, it's diverting the debate or the discussion away from the proper discussion, which is people who are being deprived of their due process rights. Remember, I think it's really important that you don't sacrifice innocent people's constitutional liberties for the purpose of gaining eyewitness testimony or for the purpose of controlling a crime scene. That, to me at least, in my opinion, doesn't seem to be the proper use of the bail or the justice system.
No, and it's not. You are absolutely correct in that. Regardless of who these individuals are, and I don't know, even if they're bad guys, even if every one of them is a bad guy with a prior criminal record, I still don't think you detain that number of people that fast. You could not have conducted an investigation in that period of time. These individuals could be released on a personal bond, and you keep tabs on them, and if they run, then you chase them. But that's the risk you take with any sort of criminal defendant. So I will agree with you on that. Is the Confederation of Clubs providing any legal defense? Are y'all fronting any money to help them during this time?
No, that's not the way the Confederation of Clubs works. I think my understanding is all of these individuals are attempting to obtain legal representation on their own. And of course, it's a big community, so there are a lot of attorneys involved. But my understanding, or I have no knowledge of the Confederation of Clubs funding the legal defense at all. Now, I don't know whether that's happening in Texas or in other places, but I have no knowledge of that. And that hasn't occurred, like I said, in my knowledge up to this point. Although I don't think that, I would be in opposition to helping someone who was being deprived of their due process rights simply because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That seems to be a worthy cause that anybody should be willing to support. Lots of times we don't want to look at other people's freedoms and realize how important they are to our own. But we can't sacrifice people's freedom of association and freedom of expression because we might not find what they represent to be in taste. That's the foundation of our Constitution, even if it is anti-establishment speech. Lots of Supreme Court precedent talks about the critical importance of speech of all types. And in fact, you need to protect the speech that is more criticized and is more vulnerable in society more than anything, because that's the foundation of freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Fair enough. David Devereaux, thanks for being our guest.
And thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. David Devereaux is with the Confederation of Clubs, receiving a lot of input from folks who tell me, and we'll go to a caller that I think is going to make that point, that the Banditos control the Confederation of Clubs. I don't know. I know very little. I only know what folks tell me, so I don't feel confident in offering an opinion. If you know something I don't know, that's obviously one person's perspective. I will tell you that I think the gentleman has a point in saying that I find it very odd that 174 people were detained, and I find it very odd that they were given $1 million bond. I've seen cases where an individual has committed a terrible, terrible act, murder and beyond. None come to mind immediately, but I watch these things where the bond was set at far less than that. Far less than that. While, 10 or so people were killed, I think it was 9, you can't say that 174 of them committed murder. I mean, it does seem that you're locking people up without... Well, anyway, your call's coming up.